Hi all. So thank you for your questions. I will try to go over all of them. So what I'm gonna do is like a quick review, quick answers to your questions. Those answers can be guideline for you to go to the texts and dissect what you're looking for. So I encourage you to go to the text and kind of dig deeper. But thank you for your questions and I'm gonna answer them. So there were a couple of questions that I received before this thread. I'll start with them. So Charlie's has asked me to kind of talk about Stevenson and Farman pieces in terms of biopolitics. If you remember Stevenson's piece, she's talking about like Inuits and how colonial violence still continues in post-colonial era through biopolitics, yeah, not through mere like direct affliction of violence, but through the policies or politics of biopolitics. And how did biopolitics work? So if you remember, like very quickly, Foucault is saying there was a shift in power from before 16th century, what he calls as ancien regime, and after 16th century. So the power worked through producing knowledge about life. So death rates, mortality, and how to keep a healthy diet, how to have a healthy body, like all these body measures and things like that. And Foucault argues that this becomes a form of government, a form of power on our bodies, on our individual selves. And this power is kind of interrelated with the state, because state also, like discourse of medicine, they work in interrelated ways. So Stevenson argues, main argument is that Canadian state kind of uses this biopolitics in order to preserve these Inuit community, in order to preserve their lives, reduce the lives of Inuits to bare life. Just so, in order to make them continue to live, Canadian state thought that the state had the right to intervene with people's traditions or ignore even traditions and culture. Yeah, so we can say that Stevenson, through the perspective of biopolitics, look at the ways colonial violence work in a post-colonial era. Yeah, but what Farman is doing actually is kind of studying up. Yeah, he is maybe arguing, if we take the logic of biopolitics to Farman's work, we can say that some people took this idea of preserving life, the policy, like this idea or sentiment that life is like life needs to be maintained in terms of like regardless of the conditions that we're in, to a different degree, yeah, to a higher degree, saying that we will preserve life even after death, yeah, like those notions, death, life blurs, as we have discussed, because the cryonic agents were calling people who have died, in our way of looking at things, patients, yeah. So we can say that Farman is looking at the ways, first, secular discourse used biopolitics to overcome the death, and second, we can say that this idea of, or this kind of urge to believe that there can be life after death, shows us the way how secular discourse is enchanted in different ways. Yeah, even if it claims, the secular discourse, even if it claims that it's objective, natural, scientific. Yeah, so that's what we were saying. But in terms of biopolitics, we can say that Farman is studying up and Stevenson is studying the, when I say studying up, it means that he's studying people with money, people with resources for scientific research, yeah, because those people have those wealth to claim that they are beating the death. But in this case, in Stevenson's case, she's looking at the way colonial violence, the state is inflicting violence on Inuit community through biopolitics. So that was another one. And Stephanie has asked, like, she wants to compare Marx and Weber. She says, are we disenchanted because of the negative effects of capitalism? Like, does Marx think that we are disenchanted because of the negative effects of capitalism? Okay, so I think Marx, first of all, the terms disenchantment, enchantment belong to Weber, but if we think that Marx kind of talk in Weberian terms, I think Marx would say that we are not, we are, and like capitalism is enchanted, yeah, it's not disenchanted, because he's saying that religion is an ideology, a tool of illusion, yeah. He was saying the idea of fetishism, like he relates the idea of fetishism to religion. So in pagan cultures, in Marx's way of thinking, in primitive religions, the pagan culture was impeding for you to see the real nature of the object, yeah. So you were kind of worshipping an object, but a tree, for example, and you were taking that object something that it is not, yeah, something of a higher power. So fetishism was to take an object for Marx and think of it full with supernatural powers, yeah, power or qualities, whatever. And in this sense, he was kind of making a similarity between capitalism, how capitalism works, how the commodity in the capitalism works, and how this fetishistic character of religion work in for man. Yeah. So religion impedes people to see the real natural causes of things. Yeah. They kind Basically, Marx says religion is pure ideology. Religion doesn't exist. People believe in religion and they are deceived and they cannot see the real or natural or objective causes of the universe. Yeah, that is his kind of main point about religion. And he says that the commodity, the thing that you buy from the shop, for example, it is also fetishistic because you do not see the real nature of that commodity. Yeah? So first, the real nature is the use value, so you pay for it, so that's another added nature that you add. And the second is that you do not see the social relationships that involved in producing that commodity. Yeah, you do not see people working in factories. You do not see how their labor were devalued, how people were mistreated. You do not see the trade routes through which the commodity reaches the shop. That's why the commodity is fetishistic in capitalism. And he would say that capitalism is enchanted because of this fetishistic nature of the commodity. Yeah. So I'm gonna go with Weber and Marx questions first, and then go. Okay. So and then switch to other ones. So Jeremy is asking Marx's idea about function of religion. So I just kind of spoke to it now. First of all, Marx is not a functionalist. He is looking at the ways in which capitalism produces systems of inequality between the the ones who hold the means of production, the factory owners, and between the ones who work for those and whose labor is sold. But as I was saying, the function of the religion is to deceive people. Is actually, he would argue that the reason why the factory workers continue to work in like bad conditions is because of religion. Yeah, religion makes them believe, makes them deceive that there is something spiritual about their lives, about what they're doing, or about an afterlife. But actually, he says this is not true. Like, it's a religion for Marx is a way of kind of uh, getting the consent of factory workers in use by people who have the power, actually. And another, and by no means I agree with this, this is just pure Marx, I'm explaining his view. How are they dissecting the problems with the modern world? So this is another question about Weber and Marx. How has everyday life come to be organized, and what kind of inequalities and epistemological problems has it created? So, first of all, both of them are, Weber and Marx, both of them are kind of questioning. Their main question is, what is the nature of capitalism? Yeah, and the historical route that the humanity took to arrive at this point. Yeah, and they are saying, when we look at that, and they agree on these things. Yeah, when we look at capitalism, we see that there are two divided classes. Yeah, workers, factory owners, proletariat, bourgeoisie. Yeah, and the problem, or kind of the epistemological worldview that capitalism put people in, is this urge to, this is more like Weber, is urge to work and urge to gain money in the sake of money. Yeah, we talked about this a lot. But we see that there is kind of not worshipping is not the right word, but kind of a willingness to make part of the market economy. Yeah, like everybody needs to work, and money becomes an important thing. Yeah, like you earn money for the sake of money, as I was saying. So those are kind of the points I think Marx and Weber would agree. They're looking at the roots and the like nature of capitalism. But their main difference is, first, we have discussed, Marx has a deterministic approach to history. So Marx is saying there's a progressive way that the history unfolds, and this is, we can understand, or we can kind of see the logic, the laws of the history through looking at the ways that people made use of the material world. Yeah. So, and capitalism was a certain stage that humanity came. Yeah. So, and he's saying, when we look at the history through these laws, we will see that it will be communism in the next stage. Yeah. This is his idea. And ideas, yeah, like religion, or for example history or culture, whatever form that you can think that include ideas, is result of the way these people kind of arranged the economy. So what he's saying is this: the ideas drive from the economic forces. Yeah? So he would say, any TV show that you're saying, any Oscar winner movie, is the product of bourgeoisie. Shows the dominant beliefs of bourgeoisie and would work to kind of suppress the ideology, to suppress the traditions, beliefs, or uh, to suppress the working class, yeah, suppress the people who doesn't own the wealth. He would say, and Weber is saying, wait a minute, I'm not so sure if the history works in such a deterministic way. Yeah, Weber would say, is saying, I don't think capitalism has emerged because of a eminent universal kind of um, reasoning behind the history. Yeah, he says history is actually contingent. It's contingent on various different things that happened at a certain time. Yeah, so he doesn't look at history through laws, but he looks at history through uh, kind of analyzing what is the different factors and analyzing how the ways in which these different factors come together. And specifically for emergence of capitalism, he says that actually capitalism, as the way it is, emerged from Protestant ethics. Yeah, these ethics that tell you to just earn money and not to indulge in luxury goods, but just save your money. And then that ethic, that urge to work in the sake of work, kind of resulted to capitalism. Yeah, so it's historically contingent in his way of understanding. What else? Do I see any more Weber and Marx? Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, yeah, I think I have spoken to all the questions. So if we come to other questions, I see that Alexander has a question about Malinowski versus Willerslev. So it's important to kind of remind ourselves that people from, like, people that we have studied, like we have looked at in the first section, they had a very different uh, agenda for anthropology. Yeah, people from who we like looked at in section 3, and Malinowski is actually looking at the function of religion, but in the sense of a very materialistic sense. Yeah, so he's looking at the society and he says like society is working, there's a harmony, like there is something functioning in society, and I'm gonna look at the different the roles of different domains in this kind of harmony, in this kind of functioning. Yeah, and he says, okay, I'm gonna look at like religion. What does it work? What does it does? What does it do in this functioning of society? And the the answer that he comes up with is that if you remember his distinction between religion and magic, like people use magic in order to kind of overcome the things that they cannot control in their everyday life. Yeah, for example, when truck riders go to sailing and they cannot control the weather, they do magic. Or when a pilot flies to feel safe, he says some magic, like some words that Malinowski considered them magical. Yeah. But Willerslev does not have the agenda. So Willerslev is a contemporary anthropologist that we were talking, and he's saying that how can we understand beliefs, traditions that are so unfamiliar to Western society? Yeah, how can we understand, or how can we represent something that is so like deeply unfamiliar and deeply different than us. Yeah. So it's a question of representation in a way. Yeah. And he's saying also he's kind of looking at the history of how these beliefs and practices were marginalized by the Western discourse. Yeah, Western discourse of enlightenment. So this is his agenda. And this is kind of the way to go, basically, how to compare and contrast them. And I have another one, Alexandra Tyler and Willerslev. So Tyler and Willerslev. Oh, actually, there is another one who wants. So okay, so Melanie is asking to me if there is a reading easier than the one that we assigned for Tyler, and honestly, I mean, I'm not sure if the reading that I will find will be easier than the reading that we had. Mostly, but I have something I can send it to you, but I'm not sure if it is necessarily easier than the one we had. But I think not I think, Willerslev in the introduction explicitly draws on Tyler, yeah, and kind of gives us a very nice overview about Tyler, about what the evolutionists think, and about that perspective in general. So I would encourage you to go and read Willerslev actually about Tyler, about like Willerslev, seeing how he summarized very well Tyler. So I mean Tyler and Willerslev, it's someone also asked a refresher kind of Tyler's evolutionist. Yeah, Alison is asking that because she wants to compare Tyler either with Nadasti or Willerslev. And yeah, Alison also, I think I spoke to this. Yeah, Nadasti and Willerslev, they do not fall under the rubric of functionalists. So they do not, as I said, they do not have the agenda of understanding how societies work. So let me talk about this a bit more. Because Malinowski and the functionalists, they are after a theoretical, abstract way, or abstract reasoning. Yeah, they wanna understand, deduce the logic. So you can think that they are kind of influenced by the scientists' view of their material. Yeah, so they say, I'm gonna look at the society and I'm gonna try to set some laws about how societies work in general. And I'm gonna kind of come up with the laws with having a variety of empirical data. Yeah, I'm gonna go look at different societies and I'm gonna deduce some laws about societies and I'm gonna come up with a theory on how societies work in general. Yeah, so but contemporary anthropologists, they do not have that agenda anymore. They're not interested in that. They say this is like doesn't make any justice to differences, yeah, in how societies are or how societies have been historically. Yeah, they're not interested in that question anymore for a variety of reasons when we look at history of anthropology. But for the purposes of this class, we can say that, as I was saying, Malinowski is functionalist, but Nadasti and Willerslev, they have a different agenda, which is the agenda of how do we represent people who are so different than us. Yeah. They are trying to break the power dynamic that the West has created beginning from the Enlightenment, yeah? And we can think of this creation in relation to the secularization, yeah? So after Enlightenment or after the post-Reformation, there is this idea that the secular, the reasonable, the scientific ideals and concepts should govern our way of thinking, our way of engaging with everyday life. And religion is optional. So if people still continue to believe that their everyday life is includes spirits, that's not like that doesn't seem very likely. Yeah, that was the overall approach of the is still overall to Western discourse. And contemporary anthropologists like Willerslev or Nadasti, they're like, how can we challenge this supremacy of the Western discourse? Yeah, this is their agenda. And yeah, Tyler, okay, refresher on Tyler's evolutionist point of view. I really encourage you to read the introduction of Willerslev's book. But, so, Tyler, anthropologists from 19th century, they're coming from a time when the West had its pinnacle, yeah? Technological development, scientific evolution, everything is working perfectly in their mind, yeah? And they're like, how can we understand our roots? How can we understand the roots, historical roots of the European civilization and European man? That's the question they have. And as I was saying, they're very much influenced by the scientific research, yeah? They say, okay, scientists, they are looking at nature or they are looking at different things to understand to come up with the laws and logics of how the natural phenomena works. Yeah, so we're gonna do that for societies. That's their logic. So we're gonna come up with laws and rules about the evolution of societies. So in their line of thinking, they they think that Tyler also thinks that there is a scale of evolution. Yeah, that all societies, all cultures follow. Yeah, and Tyler says religion, or what he calls like spiritual practices, also shows is an indication of where societies fall in this scale of evolution. Yeah. So, for example, animism. If a society believes in animism, they are in a very low place. So, for Tyler, if a certain group of people like believe or act in accordance with animism, they are not able to differentiate um, like they can for Tyler, those people their minds have not developed enough to differentiate who is real and what is unreal. Yeah, he would say people like natural things, they belong to the domain of the real, and spiritual things, they belong to the domain of unreal. And people with animistic beliefs, they have not developed this capacity, Tyler would say. And Nadasti is like a little bit of Nadasti and Willerslev. Nadasti is saying, or more so working with a methodological concern. So he's asking, how can anthropologists develop a perspective to understand these practices who are very different? And his answer is radical participation. He says, through kind of participating in these people's activities, you can come, you, the anthropologist, can become very close to understanding what these traditions, culture really are about. Willerslev is more, I mean, he wouldn't, I think, necessarily disagree with Nadasti, but he is um he wants to challenge the Western philosophy as well. Like he wants to first he wants to represent these beliefs, animistic beliefs, and then kind of put the like that Western philosophy in a conversation with those beliefs, yeah, and saying like, what do we get out of from that conversation? So he doesn't see neither of them universalist, like a universal way of being. He doesn't say, oh, we need to be like them, okay? We need to kind of leave our ways of being and we need to be like them. No, he's saying, no, we should just, let's see what happens when we put those conceptions around self, personhood into a conversation. Um, who wants and con? Okay, so who wants also, yeah, Bubant is an interesting figure because Bubant, as opposed to Nadasti, for example, he doesn't think that, or he doesn't explicitly say that it is possible to feel close to these practices or cultures. Yeah, he's kind of taking a distance from that way of thinking, but he's saying we can, even if we cannot understand, we can take their leads and conduct the ethnography in their own terms. Yeah, like if people are possessed by ancestors, like as in this article, we can take these spirits who possess people as interviews. Yeah, why not? Like he is kind of challenging this idea that a person is a bounded individual, and in that individual, no other person can reside. Yeah, he says no. When you look at them, they believe that that individual can be possessed by various people. So I'm gonna treat them as people see them, not as my Western cultural background tell me to associate one interviewer with one person, one individual. Yeah. Uh, Connie's doing something else. Connie's looking at indigenous beliefs and practices, but he's also interrogating the uh, anthropocentric, like the human-centered way of looking at anthropology. Yeah, and what he's saying is, what if we give up with our obsession of thinking human at the center? Yeah, what if we try to see things from the force perspective? Yeah, what information we get? This is the question that he is asking. Um, yeah, I think I talked. Okay. Crystal has another question, and any modern day scenario. So that's the. I mean, you can use any scenario to talk about, to make them into a conversation. I mean, yeah, the obvious scenario that comes to my mind is like, what would they think about coronavirus? Yeah, like how would they relate to that? For example, I don't know, Tyler or Willerslev. If you imagine them as contemporary figures with their like own way of thinking, and how would they talk about that? Or how would they talk about spiritual practices? Yeah, that's like this new age things. So, and you can put them in any setting, if you can put them in a like a casual party, you can put them in a I don't know, state meeting, something like that. You can put them in any setting. And Crystal is asking how to insert quotes. So that's, I mean, if you're going to do dialogue and or story or an creative endeavor, I think you should not, or at least try not to put quotes, because that's the whole exercise. But if you really want to, so if someone else is talking about, let's say, Durkheim's work, yeah, and the person who's talking about Durkheim, and you want to insert a Durkheim's quote in there, the person may say, so Durkheim in his work blah 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 on page blah 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 say this, yeah. Or if Durkheim is talking about, like, if you're making Durkheim talk about his own work, or, and he can say, like, in my book blah 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 on page this I say this, yeah. So the thing about citation is that you indicate where the direct quote comes from, yeah. And as long as you do that in any other way other than like this, like the date and the page number as we do it in paper, it's fine. It should be fine. Yeah, I think that was all. You can send me an email anytime with any other questions, further questions. I'm happy to answer them. And yeah, I wish I had the chance to see you guys after this strange semester ended, but I'm an email away whenever you want. You don't have to ask me questions about this class specifically, but you can send me an email whenever you want. Thank you.